They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and in 2008, this was the picture from Kenya that the rest of the world had been anxiously waiting for. The 1,000 words behind it, on the other hand, that which remained behind closed doors, at least until Thursday, following the latest cable release by Wikileaks that has eventually opened up the rest of the country into the thoughts of President Kibaki, Prime Minister Raila Odinga and Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka before the crucial negotiations brokered by Chief Mediator Kofi Annan commenced. The cable, one of the many sent by United States Ambassador Michael Ranneberger on the 22nd of January 2008, documents the ambassador's conversations with all the three leaders on the possibility of peaceful talks and an eventual political solution that would end the political crisis prevailing then. I am ready to meet one-on-one with President Kibaki without preconditions in the presence of Kofi Annan, is said to have been Raila Odinga's reaction to his intervention, even though the ambassador says that later on, one of Raila's aides returned to him armed with a basket full of proposed changes as conditions to be met before he meets with the president. President Kibaki's reaction, on the other hand, was not so subtle, the president openly admitting his skepticism over Raila's willingness to meet, complaining that, quote, Odinga keeps putting conditions, end quote. The president is also said to have been skeptical that Raila would agree to anything reasonable, saying, quote, I cannot have Odinga in the government. It is impossible to work with him, end quote. Further, according to the president, there already was a power sharing in place with him leading the executive while the Odinga-led ODM party dominated parliament, and that he was willing to make some concessions, but there was a line he couldn't cross. Quote, some of his people could come into government, but not him and not Ruto, end quote. Not quite the situation now. Interestingly, though, is Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka's role in the entire process, a man Ranneberger describes in an earlier cable release as, quote, though Musyoka presents himself as a born-again Christian with the purest of political intentions, keen observers see Musyoka as largely an opportunist, interested primarily in advancing his political ambitions, end quote. The vice president said to have opposed the option of having the president share power with Raila Odinga. Kalonzo is also said to have confided to the envoy about his plans for 2012, indicating that his reasons for accepting the vice president's position after the disputed polls was the assurance by both President Kibaki and the soon-to-be Deputy Prime Minister Uhuru Kenyatta that they would support him as candidate for the presidency in 2012, since Kenyans would not opt for a candidate of the same community as the current president come 2012. Kalonzo is said to have claimed that if Raila were to be elected, he would become another Hugo Chavez, the Venezuelan president, owing to his apparent socialist inclinations. The vice president is finally, according to an earlier released cable, said to have sought the intervention of the then US President George Bush to urge Kibaki to step aside in the 2007 presidential race, what would have left him as the preferred candidate against Prime Minister Raila Odinga in what he says would have been his, quote, Hail Mary pass, unquote. The latest cable release may have, more than anything else, qualified the words of Richard Armour, who said that politics is seemingly a game that is more interested in right or left and not right or wrong, allowing leaders to put their own selfish interests ahead of their own people. Evelyn Wambui, Citizen TV, Nairobi.